So, I don't know why I keep telling this story or why I continue telling my story. Maybe it'll help people. Maybe it's part of a book. Maybe it is just to hear me talk. I don't know. And I don't want to talk about, I don't like talking about the ugly things that I went through. I don't like it, but again, if it helps people, then I will. So, one of the hardest things in the world is recognizing what I went through, and recognizing that I wasn't obeying what God said. But I didn't understand that was what God, I didn't understand that was God. I just thought it was me. I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that surely everyone else was right and that I was unhappy because I wasn't the one that was right. I wasn't the one I just thought that it was my fault. I thought that I had to fix me. And that I wasn't worth it. And so I worked really hard and for a really long time believing that it was my fault, that I was the one that wasn't God speaking. And if I would say, hey, and I would say something that I knew that God was saying, I would believe that, or be told that I was crazy and I would be made fun of. And that's a really hard thing to accept later and realize if I had just listened to God, so much more would have been bypassed. I guess so much pain would have been bypassed. But I also get to look back now and I get to see that of what beautiful things God was allowing to happen. And just because I wasn't listening didn't mean that He wasn't there. It just meant that He was being patient with me. And then that's a really hard thing, because you read the Bible and Scripture and it says that God is a just God, but He is also a patient and loving and steadfast God and a good God. So it's really hard for me to even admit and say I was married to Mitch Morrison, even though it was not a real marriage. Because marriage is love, and marriage is the unity of each other, and something that God blesses and makes beautiful and holy. And so I won't say that in God's eyes I was married to Mitch Morrison, because it wasn't beautiful. I got a beautiful little boy out of it. An amazing little boy out of it. I got Bryson. And so it's a really hard thing for me to say. But I can also say that I got to do some amazing things. I got to get into fitness, and my brain began to heal. My body began to heal. I gained so many beautiful friendships and relationships along the way. And I got to do things above and beyond what I could even foreshadow in just a small amount of time. And I missed some things. But that doesn't mean that God stopped. And he was being consistent and reminding me what and who he really wanted. And that was Josh Holmes. And not anyone has to understand it. Not anyone. God speaks to everyone differently. But God does direct and does show people, yes, I meant it, what I was telling her. I meant it. I meant it for them. And that sometimes becomes overwhelming too, because then you remember how loved you were and how big and glorious God really is. And so, yes, in 2002, I did hear God telling me not to marry Mitch Morrison, but I thought that it was just me. I thought it was my fault. I thought that something was wrong with me, so I just said yes. And I should have known, because the whole time God was saying no. He was saying no, no, and no. He said no when I had my car wreck. He said no after it. And I just thought it was me. And through that journey, I gained a lot of weight because I didn't think I could. And in 2003, I went to work at a hospital because, I went to work for a hospital and stopped teaching. I wasn't allowed to go back to college. I wasn't allowed to go back to college. Mitch Morrison would not allow me to go back to college. My mom did not want me to go to college, but my mom, she wouldn't pay for it, and that's okay. I was an adult, but I think she was more fearful. But I'm not going to discredit her as being a bad mother for that. She didn't know. But Mitch Morrison wouldn't allow me to go back to college, and I couldn't continue teaching without a teacher's license. So I went and worked at a hospital because I wanted to go back into the nursing field, and that's the truth. And I worked in the neurology department because I wanted to be someone who gave back, like the nurses who had taken care of me and the medical staff who had taken care of me. And it was one of the hardest jobs I've ever done. And don't mean physically or mentally, I meant emotionally. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I gained a lot of weight because food became my friend. And food was where I could contain my happiness and my goodness. And as much as I would be made fun of, I'd surround myself with friends and food, and they were comfort. And so in 2003, I started working out, and because of a friend, she had started working out with a personal trainer. And so in 2004, I wasn't happy physically. Physically, I was miserable with myself. I was huge. I was close to a size 16. I weighed over 205 pounds. And I went and met with a personal trainer. And I got to choose a personal trainer. And so I started becoming healthier. And I started working out with a personal trainer. And that was my choice, and that was on my own. His name was Jeff. And actually, he was handicapped. One of his legs was much shorter than the other. And he was my personal trainer. And I remember sitting down, getting ready to work out with him, and another personal trainer came up in front of me, and he looked at me dead in the eyes, and I was sitting down stretching, and he looked at me and he said, and no one had ever said this to me. And I had been made fun of, I had been criticized, and what he said shook me to my core. But he said, don't you know, I could tell you what I was wearing even. And he said, don't you know that you're prettier than this? You're too pretty to be this weight and this size. And no one had ever said that to me. And it actually meant so much to me because he thought I was pretty. He thought I was pretty. And he knew I was too pretty to be overweight and fat. And he knew I was worth it in some amount. And so that was my journey to start in personal training with a personal trainer. Happy Sunday. And you can call this part 20 or not.